Hey Warren,
Hi, Roy. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm here. We are.
Yes, yes. Still counting down. Thanks again for joining in your current situation. And boy, I can't give you enough props for hanging in there with these recordings each week. And of course, this is the big one coming up in a couple days for you. And again, all of us, unanimously are will be thinking of you this week, going into Wednesday. Of course, we're pre-recording this week, so by the time this drops, you will be fit as a fiddle come Sunday, and
Yeah.
and raring to go. Just know that we're all in this together, and we will be thinking about you the whole time, and well wishes, thoughts, and prayers from all of us to all of you.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, today we are. It's actually Monday, February 17th. So when this actually is dropped, which will be this coming Sunday, it will be the 23rd. So my surgery is on the 19th. So yeah, very anxious, very eager to get this going. So yeah, this it'll be I'll be on the other side of the fence, so to speak. So which is a good thing. But thank you
Yeah.
for all those positive thoughts and prayers, and I appreciate everybody's support out there. And very excited to talk about this upcoming episode because
Hmm.
it is we're really starting to get to the latter part of the first season, but we have a very special guest star that's going to be joining us for this discussion. And before we do that intro, I'm just going to give a teaser in regards to what this episode is about, as though the folks out there don't know because you flashed the title up. But from ITC, back in the day, Moonbase Alpha finds itself caught up in a war between two planets and the wiles of a beautiful woman. Of course, we're talking about episode 18, season 1, The Last Enemy.
The last enemy. This is going to be a fun one, so we'll roll the credits and come back with our very special guest.
Sounds good.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, well, let's get right into the last enemy here. And Roy, you had mentioned a very special guest, and no better way to introduce such guest with other than this.
Hello.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi. How you
Hello,
doing?
welcome.
Great
Thank
seeing
you,
you.
Warren. Nice to see you, Roy and Warren. How you guys doing?
Oh, I'm hanging in there.
Good. You're going to be fine, Roy. I promise you.
Thanks, Suzanne. No, yeah, I'm just nervous, but it's all good.
Have
It's
a
all
stiff
good.
drink.
I could use a stiff drink. It's funny too because they came in today and they were saying, if I wanted to get something, just like some real food, just it would have to get cleared. Shari could bring it in or Ryan could bring it in for me. So
Yeah.
I may take him up on that, but I don't even have the desire. But I know, and I can't have alcohol, but it's a good stiff drink right now would probably calm
No.
me. But it's great seeing you. I mean, my God,
Nice.
5 months already since the convention in London already, which is
I can't
crazy.
believe it. Is it really 5
It's a half
months?
a year. Next month it'll be a half a year. It's I don't know.
Jesus God,
Time
unbelievable.
just so quickly.
And I got Clifton there. I've been trying to contact him, and I can't get hold of him.
No.
I don't know. He was due to go in to have a hip replacement, so hopefully he's okay.
Yeah.
And he was just lovely. And thank you so very much for helping to coordinate all of that.
Right. It's okay.
That was-
He's fine. I mean, he was fine. I had to really persuade him to come, I have to tell you, because he didn't
were
come
elated.
to the States, did he, Roy? He didn't come to the States.
No, I mean, we were very fortunate to be able to do at the last minute. And again, you helped, a lot with that, coordinating with him.
Well, I decided, I said to him, if I come and pick you up, will you come? Okay, he said. And the first thing he said to me, oh my God, haven't you put on weight? That's typical. I said, I haven't put that much on. But anyway, no, we were going to meet up. There was Quentin, him and I were going to meet up, but he was in so much pain with his hip. Yeah. And I've been trying to, he might have gone in to have a hip replacement, but hopefully he'll be all right.
He was a trooper at the event, though. I mean, he was, interacting with fans, and I know he was having pain. I know, and he was there and just, full of smiles. And I think, from, spiritually, I think it was good for him because he saw how much he was really, loved and everything.
He enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We were very honored, and you helped arrange a number of appearances behind the scenes. Your help was invaluable, my friend, and I can't thank you enough for everything you did to make that event special as it was.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it was, and it was just so nice to see everybody, and I think everybody universally had a wonderful time, and just there was some nice memories forged, and photo opportunities, and couldn't be more grateful.
Yeah, not at all.
It's a very special event. But that's when we're not doing the in-person, that's what's great about these virtual events. I mean, technology has allowed us to do this. Shari was even saying that to me yesterday. It's how I'm lucky that I can do all this. I mean, back in the day, if you had an operation, you're pretty much, either in the bed or the chair, and you've got your book, and then that's it. But of course, speaking of books, I've got my reading materials that I, have with me. Of course, Bob and David's book. I've got The Making of Space 1999 back from the day. I've got John Kenneth Muir's book. So things are good in regards to all that.
Good.
Chris Bentley's book.
You have a nice little library there, Roy.
And then, have to give a plug to UFO. So, there's that.
Yeah.
All I need is a couple of my model eagles on the windowsill, and then life will be good. I'm thinking of Nancy that, when we were in London, you remember when we were doing the sightseeing tour? Oh, and she'd be putting the eagle in different positions and, taking pictures of it. So
yeah. She took some great shots. That's proof to the point where I was thinking about this. Funny, you can put an eagle in anything, anywhere, and it makes it cool.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what it is, but you can drop an eagle in any environment, if you will, and instantaneously it just ups the cool factor. So No, so listen, for this week, Suzanne. So we're going to discuss a specific episode, which you were a
Mm-hmm.
big part of, and of course throughout the course of the series. And maybe let's just take a moment or two and tell bring everybody up to speed on your involvement with Space 1999, and throughout both seasons, and what you did, what your capacity was, what your role was, and we'll find some nice photos to go along with that. Okay.
Okay.
So
You
how
want
did you get involved?
on?
First off,
Sorry?
how did you get involved with the series?
Oh, well, I was just asked to do it. I knew the assistant on there, and he called me up to say, would I be interested? And I thought to myself, well, at least it's a regular. I did the first season and then the second season. I thought, and I had Justin, he was a little boy then, and I was a single mom, and I was separated from his father. So I thought, right, well, I might as well do it. And that's how I got into it. And, it was honestly, it was really good fun to start with. And then they said, would I stand in and double for Barbara? And which I did. And we had a giggle.
And you were a stand-in as opposed to a stunt double, a stand-in, right?
Double was Dorothy Ford, and I did her doubling, just ordinary doubling, like a back shot with a wig on, or that's where I was standing in there, was lying in, and then if it was a long shot, and with the back of her, it was me. So, with a wig on, and also I don't know what I was doing there, but I remember that I did a few of those, where they did my hair and everything, and and that's what I did. And also when she was in that space suit, and dear Sylvia, she was a sweet lady. And he was nice. I can't remember his name. Who was that? One of the producers, wasn't it? What was his name?
I'm not sure who it was.
I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, he was one of the producers, and I can't think of his name now. But anyway, and Sylvia was such a fun lady. She really was she was a real sparky lady. She was lovely.
Nice. It was a pleasure to meet Dee in London just a few months back as well.
She was so much like her mother. My God.
She was very sweet, very nice, very approachable.
Nice lady. Yeah. Really nice lady. I went up to her and I said to her, I know whose daughter you are. And I told her how lovely her ma was. Aww. And she really was. Nice lady.
So many people have said that about her. That she was really so many people have said so many warm things about Sylvia, especially the actors, just that she was so approachable and she really cared about everyone.
She did. She was lovely. Yeah, she was lovely. I cannot think of that guy's name. I just can't. But he was one of the
he was a producer, or was he a director or assistant director maybe, or
he was one of the producers.
So he would have been for the first year then. I'm not sure myself.
He used to work with Jerry Anderson a lot. That man.
Was it Reg Hill? Was it Reg Hill?
Yes.
That might be. It might be Reg. Yep.
Reg. Yeah. Yep. That's the name that immediately came to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
It looks like you also played a couple of background characters, Suzanne.
Yeah.
So you were actually on screen as a nurse in the episode called Space Warp
during the second season.
Yep. That looks like Jack Claff.
It is.
Nick Tate, right?
Is Jack
Yep.
Claff.
Yeah.
And the other guy, who was a crowd guy, Mike something. I can't remember his name. Okay. Mike something.
He did a lot of background performances as well too. The other medic that's next to you.
He did, yeah.
I was going to say Nick Hobbs, but I'm not sure if that's who it is.
No, that's not Nick Hobbs.
No.
Nick Hobbs has just recently passed away. Nick
Yeah.
Hobbs was a
Yes.
guy. He was he was such a nice guy.
He actually did 2 episodes. Ironically enough, though, Nick Hobbs was in Space Warp. He played a security guard that comes rushing in the medical center and tries to stun Mentor that Mai has changed into. And then he was also in Bringers of Wonder when he plays the film. I can't think of the technician's name, but he's basically recording everything. Clive.
Yes, Clive Cantor. Yeah.
Clive Cantor, yeah.
You bet.
No,
Listen,
Nick Hobbs was in it a lot. Sorry, Warren.
No. You go ahead.
I just said Nick Hobbs worked on space a lot. He was.
And I was reading about his career too, Suzanne. Evidently, I think he had gotten some awards for his stunt work. I mean, he was very revered as a stuntman in the industry. So it's
one of the nicest men. He was one of the nicest stuntmen.
Wow.
It's a shame. I haven't seen him for years, but I always remember him as being a really nice guy.
Well, and the other one speaking of stuntmen that strikes in my mind is Paul Weston.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paul Weston's lovely. He's always been the same, Paul. Very friendly. He's always been nice. Always.
Such a down-to-earth guy.
Oh, completely down to earth. Lovely guy he is, Paul. I mean, some of those stunt guys are really, well, they're not my cup of tea. They just think they're great, But
no, and you're talking about somebody that has an extensive background and career, Paul Weston. I mean, he has done everything, and he is so down to earth. But when you think about all the movies and television,
I remember Paul when he first came into the business, and he was just an extra.
Wow.
And got into stunts, but he's never changed. Paul, he's such a nice guy. He really is a nice guy.
It's saying about being an extra too, Suzanne. It's interesting because in Breakaway, there are a lot of photographs of him in the first episode of Space 1999, where you can see him in his main mission, and he has the red sleeve. He's a technical sleeve, not technical, but the red sleeve he has.
But I'm going back further in the big. I think it was the early '60s when he was just
starting out.
Yeah, he was just in as an extra. I remember him, but he was never flash. He was just a very nice family guy. He was a family man. Mm-hmm. Nice guy.
Yeah. There was so many Pauls involved in London, and you brought another Paul with you, Paul Kirby.
Do you know, I spoke to Paul Kirby after that. He rang me and he said he had such a great weekend and he wouldn't have missed it for the world. He said it was so lovely to see everybody that he hadn't seen for years. So I must actually, reminds me, I must give him a call. He really enjoyed it. He really did.
That's incredible. There was a lot of that same sentiment, and again, thanks to you with helping out with bringing all these people together, Suzanne.
That's all right. And Ina was a nice lady, wasn't she?
Ina was lovely. Yeah, I was just talking about her yesterday with someone. She was so lovely and just fit perfectly with everything we were trying to do with reunite all these people. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about for the folks out there, Ina Scriver, who was in the episode The AB Chrysalis, and she played A. So that just to remind folks out there who, and I only got to talk to her briefly, just in passing, because things were so crazy.
Did you not speak to her, Roy? She's lovely. No, and she was, but I remember her in the episode. She was a nice girl.
And Paul Kirby, I only got to say hi in passing too, because there was just so many moving parts going on with everything.
So much going on.
There was a lot going on.
I was the one telling Warren, "Hey, we gotta go. We gotta go." moving.
I was
gotta-
like the Flash the entire weekend. People would tap me on the shoulder and I'd say, just a second. Phew,
Yeah,
and I
it's
was
like
gone.
Warren,
Yeah.
your seconds over, Warren. I need this now.
But it all worked out.
Yeah.
It was
Yes,
a brilliant week.
all the
And,
behind the
Good.
scenes that you don't say.
exactly. So listen, for this episode, The Last Enemy. Now, I was thinking that just for Suzanne's benefit, we'd maybe see if Roy could give a little personal recap of the episode, and I'll scroll some photos over top just to see if it triggers any memories for you, Suzanne, and we can branch off and discuss those as we
Okay.
come upon them. Okay.
Okay.
And Roy,
Yeah.
you're up. You're okay with giving a quick little synopsis?
Yeah, it probably won't be quick though.
Okay, I got a lot of photos.
When I do Roy's tie-dye sci-fi corner, there's my shameless plug. And I say I'm going to be, doing the plot. Ross is like, no, the plot. No. Interesting enough. Okay, this episode was actually filmed between November. Well, actually, there's two sets of dates with this. It was shot in November of 1974, between the 8th and 19th of November. But as originally conceived with the script, it was set in a certain manner where, and this is just kind of an overview. What had happened was Alpha, and I'll just make this brief. Basically, Alpha comes upon this two planets, and it's giving them the opportunity to maybe potentially pick one which they could settle on. And what happens is they get closer to the planets. An alien ship, basically that looks like a battleship, comes to land onto the moon. And they try to take defensive postures, but unfortunately the ship knocks out the Eagles. They're not able to launch the ships. Their anti-gravity screens, the defense system is knocked out. And basically they are just stuck with the ship landing on Alpha. What happens, though, when they think the base is going to get attacked, in essence, the ship is firing at the other planet. So what happens is it unravels that there is a war going on between these two planets. And now Alpha is in the middle of it because they're like a platform in space. So originally, as this episode was filmed, as I said that there were two sets of dates, it as originally filmed, it opens with the exchange of fire between Betha, which is the planet that is pretty much, I'll say, dominated by the women because we never see any males. And then Delta, which we are led to believe that it's a male planet. And Betha sends their ship, the Sagittarius, to land. Cetasius, excuse me. Cetasius, yes. And it lands on the moon to exchange fire. And there's a volley that goes on at least twice. And what eventually happens is the Bethan ship is disabled and thought to be destroyed. And essentially, Dione's ship was not destroyed and is launching missiles against Delta again. And as a result of this happening, Koenig is forced to give the coordinates of the Bethan ship, Dione's ship, to the Deltans, the male planet, to destroy it. So when all of this was done, and that's just a quick overview, Jerry Anderson was not really happy with this. And as a result, felt that, Koenig really was just kind of pushed to the side. He really wasn't making any command decisions. I mean, basically he gives them the coordinates as far as where the ship is, but there's not like a big exchange with the Alphans, and especially with, Koenig taking, the reins, so to speak. So he makes the decision to pretty much put this episode to the side, and he's going to come back to it. What they do is they film the rest of the season's 6 episodes. When they get to the Testament of Arcadia, they come back to this episode, and what they do is they film for 3 days. Now, this story was originally conceived the screenplay was written by Bob Kellett, who also directed this episode. And Bob Kellett had indicated that this premise for the story idea had been from Barbara Bain. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a background with that. Those 3 additional days of filming, those scenes were written by Johnny Byrne. And what was done is they were intermingled within the principal photography that had been done in November. Now, mind you, they're coming back into February and they're refilming it. So I'm just going to take a pause there. Suzanne, do you have recollections of working with Carolyn Mortimer or her being on the set?
Yeah.
Because
and then nice girl.
She was very nice.
She was a nice, really nice, friendly girl. Well, I guess it was like Joan Collins or Christopher Lee. They all had their own dressing rooms, but the girls sort of, although she was very well known, Carolyn Mortimer, she wasn't like a big star like Christopher Lee and Joan Collins and all that lot. So we all used to share the same dressing room, all the girls, the actors and everything. Wow. And she was really good fun. Nice girl. I was really surprised, Roy, when you told me that she passed away. Sad, nice person. I've watched her in other TV shows as well. She was lovely.
Yeah, and sadly, she just passed away. In fact, she passed away on September 20th of 2020. When she did this episode, she was like 32 years old, and I think of that because I'm thinking of my son Ryan, who we all know. He's going to be 32 in September, and it just kind of blows my mind, with that. But yeah, she did a lot of different television appearances. I read in the 60s that she worked with Denholm Elliott on a television series. I guess she was on The Saint. She did a lot of different appearances, and as you said, she was definitely known.
Yeah, she was fun. No, she was a fun girl.
Her mom was Penelope, a novelist, Penelope Mortimer, and her stepdad was Sir John Mortimer, who I guess was a playwright.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Big guy. Yeah, very well known. Actually, her stepdad was very well known.
Yeah.
But she was a nice girl, and I remember because she was all in this black. They were all in black uniform and everything. But she was nice, very nice indeed. I can't remember the other girl. Who are those other girls?
Well, now this is the other part of what I wanted to kind of jump in about. So, coming back to in regards to what was everything that was being filmed. So, if you watch this episode, and this is actually something that I had actually picked up upon years ago, and I'm not sure, Warren, maybe I'm going to think maybe you may have noticed this, but at different points in time when you're watching, you see Dione, her hair seems to be a little bit longer. She has almost like a softer look to her. Now, this photo that you're showing right there, I mean, it's not a close-up, but she has almost like a harder look. Her hair is a little bit shorter. She just looks a little bit, I'm going to say it looks a little bit more meaner. So what they did was they went back and they needed to add different scenes to kind of refine the story, because what had happened was with Jerry Anderson not being happy. I was saying earlier that Johnny Burns had actually written extended dialogue. So some of the scenes that actually were filmed in regards to the new scenes were like the shot that you have up right now, Warren. Anything that was on the Cetasius where they're showing the flight deck, where it's like, the control panels. Now, those actresses, Suzanne, their names is Carolyn Courage, Linda Hooks, and Tara Faraday. And they were the 3 actresses that made up Dione's crew.
Don't know them.
Yeah, so anything that was with them, and you're seeing the controls of the Cetasius, I have a problem pronouncing that was all additional footage. There's also a scene that takes place where they meet Dione at the airlock. She hands her gun over. So that was filmed, and in perfect timing, Warren. That's where they first encounter her, and she takes off it's like a biker helmet, and she takes it off, and they see who she is. The next scene that is in the episode is with Dione and Helena and Koenig in main mission, and basically Koenig is not interrogating her, but he pretty much is just saying that, you know what, you have no place to, you know, request asylum. You can't be making demands. And he says, you know what, we're going to have you taken away. That was an additional scene. The scene right after that, they're in the command conference area, and she's actually introducing herself and saying who she is. So that was the original scene that actually was filmed first. So when you're watching it, it's kind of weird that, why didn't she introduce herself first? You know, she's making demands, and then the next thing you know, it jumps to the commands, you know, where they're in the command conference, and she's giving, you know, her background. And the reason being is they added that additional scene where she's making demands and that she wants asylum. So that was an additional scene. There's an additional scene where Alan Carter is talking to Paul and Kano, saying he thought the ship was knocked out, and he's just, you know, doesn't understand that how she escaped and was alive. Also with Talos, when he is talking to Koenig on the big screen, saying that Alpha is going to be attacked and bombarded because, you know, Koenig has to give the information as far as where the gunship is of the Bethans. That was an additional scene that was added. And then, of course, the last 10 minutes where Koenig says he's coming out on the lunar surface, and basically they send the moon buggy out to destroy the Cetasius, and then it's like a trap. All of that was additionally filmed at the end of February. So when you're watching this again, and just keep in mind, you'll see these different things, how they're intercut. You'll also see the appearance of Dione looking different. Again, anytime they're showing the flight deck or any of the controls in the Cetasius, it's new. There is a scene where you see Dione on the big screen, and she has the lighting panel behind her. That was part of the original photography, because that's all they intended to show, with the exchange going on with Koenig and her on the screen. So it all kind of fits, but it kind of gives you an awareness when you're watching it. So I think it's kind of interesting and kind of fun just to kind of let the fans know about that. And I'm sure a lot of folks may have heard this already, but maybe if you haven't to that level, oh, there goes my alarm. And the Cetasius is actually they found out about me. She's zeroing in on coordinates right now. But anyway, it's so I just wanted to give that background information. Just, it's kind of like a little extra info. And again, like I said, even at a younger age, it seemed interesting to me that Dione looked different. And the reason that she did look different, again, is because it was literally 3 months later.
If you have to run, Roy, don't worry. We can.
I'm just going to mute for a minute, and the nurse will be in, and they'll give me my meds, and they'll knock me out, and then you won't have to hear me anymore. I'm just kidding. Just 1 second.
No problem. So Suzanne, boy, how about that? You know, he's a couple days out, but he is so excited to be here. I just love Roy, and his enthusiasm for all things Space 1999, just unbelievable.
I know. I can't believe it.
So
you're lovely, Roy.
I heard that. Thank you. I appreciate it. I just love this show, and and then I love talking about it. I love sharing information that I find from other fans. And then
I find it fascinating because, you know, I just went to the studio every day, did my job, if I was doubling or if I was doing this or doing that or whatever. And you know more about it. I mean, it was going from one episode to the next episode to the next. It just used to just go in, like, finish one, then the next morning the other one starts. So you know far more about it than I do. I just worked on it.
And it was just a 9 to 5 to you. It was just a regular job, right?
It was.
But for us, and all these years later, considering Roy and I were.
No, and that's why I love, you know, I always like to give a shout out to David Hirsch back in for Starlog magazine back in the day. But, you know, back then we were limited on our resources that we have. But, you know, one of the books that I love to look at to get information, because I believe in sharing information and letting people know about different things that are out there. This book is called The Vault by Chris Bentley, and I highly recommend it if anybody has it or hasn't read it. There's so many tidbits of information that are located in that book. And, it's stuff that I didn't know about and have been able to share. And that's why I love sharing the information. Of course, I want to give a shout out to, Bob Wood and then also David Hirsch's book, too, that they have a lot of information that, they can find about to everything that might have been the Lost Universe of Space 1999. And then also, I wanted John Kenneth Muir's book. I mean, again, he has a lot of great information. And then also The Making of Space 1999. How many fans actually have this book back from the day? I could even tell you a story about that, but I don't want to bore anybody. But anyway.
No, you're fine. You're fine, Roy. A veritable fountain of information. With
Just
all
share.
things, all aspects of Space 1999. And there you go again.
Yeah, no, I'm good. The nurse that is in here and she's helping me out. She probably thinks I'm crazy. Nah, she's helping.
No, I've always enjoyed this episode. A couple things about it that you didn't touch on. Number one, this episode is really highlighting the Elfins again and their ingenuity, not so much a mysterious unknown force episode where there's, this is the Elfins pitted against an obstacle or an enemy or an oppressor and using their own ingenuity to get out of it. And one of the things I really like about the middle of this episode is the whole negotiating the ceasefire that Koenig implements between the two planets, and just the cutting back and forth between Thea and Talos and things like that really highlight the Elfins and how they had to get out of this, right? They're stuck in the middle, and what are they going to do? Well, behind the scenes, they're just buying time, right? So it was sort of a ruse on one aspect to just buy time until they're out of range, and then they don't have to worry about it. But no, I thought it played very well from that aspect. And the other thing is, of course, the sort of Twilight Zone style trick ending.
Yes.
Whereas the viewer, you're not aware again what's going on, and especially when I was 5 years old watching this, I was like aghast to the final reveal and the way they shot that with the moon buggy and who you think is Koenig, and seeing the helmet in slow motion drop off and hit the lunar landing in the moon dust. Really impactful, and I enjoyed the way that played out as well.
Yeah, the special effects that they was. Oh, go ahead, Suzanne. I'm sorry.
No. When was it shown? What was it, on a Saturday in the States when it was first shown? Was it on a Saturday?
Just
to watch it.
Yeah, in the States, this first season premiered in September of 1975. It originally was on a Sunday night. Originally on Sunday nights for probably about maybe 6 to 8 weeks. And then what they did was they moved it over to Saturday nights. It was on around 7 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays.
Saturday, sort of lunchtime here, because that's when Justin used to watch it.
Now, unfortunately, I'm not sure what the showing times were in England. I know some of that differed. I know there's some folks didn't get to see it. Yeah. But
Suzanne, was it in the UK? Was it shown in what they call prime time, like sort of that 7 to 9 o'clock?
On Saturdays, but they really, it was more for kids.
Yeah,
they were shown more for children. Young adults, I suppose. But I mean, I don't know how old. Justin was only a little boy. How old are you? Same ages. Warren, you're the same age as Justin, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty close. I'm 55.
Yeah, and I'm 55 too.
Yeah, and I'm 58. I'm 3 years older.
Well, 55. He's 55, and he used to watch it. I'm sure. I have to check with him. I'm sure it was on a Saturday, or perhaps it was a Saturday evening, early evening. I can't remember now, but I know that he loved it. He really loved it.
Well, and it's funny you say that because it was, I know in Canada, it was really marketed very much as children's programming,
Yeah,
which today just boggles my mind because of some of the themes and content that you saw, especially
yeah,
throughout your life. It was very adult oriented, very
yeah,
horrific in many cases, and
it was.
Well, especially when you're talking about
I
Dragon's Domain, Force of Life, Troubled Spirit,
Spirit, the
That's of
end
the
of
Dominion.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting a lot of, I mean, those are like horror. And I think,
yeah,
if I remember correctly, it was on, because I know in a lot of the groups, folks will talk about how it was on Saturday mornings. And I believe in the UK, or maybe it was delayed. There was different things that took place. But, it's really, when in retrospect, it's hard to believe that this would have been geared towards, young children at that time. But, like I
well, I
said,
think
I was 9 years old
I
watching it at 7 o'clock.
yeah. I mean, I remember, like that monster. What what
yes.
what was that?
Dragon's Domain. Yeah, with
Yeah,
Johnny
very,
Garco.
yeah, really scary
I hid behind
for
my
children.
TV set when that was on. I did. I remember my mom and dad. My dad went to pick up my mom or something at the store, and the episode was on, and or they went down. No, they went downstairs or something, and then because in the apartment, and I was just they were literally down the stairs, and it's like I heard that roar, and I was like, oh my god, it's like
Oh,
I can't watch
yeah,
this. I had my Panasonic tape recorder going. This is before DVDs and video
yeah,
recorders, and I was just cassette taping the episode because I wanted to have it to be able to listen to. And that's what I did back in
yeah.
the day to entertain myself. I would record
Mm,
Space 1999, and I would record Star Trek, and I would just listen to
mm.
those episodes while I was like playing with my stuff.
This is what Quentin and I were talking. I speak to Quentin a lot, and he was saying, I cannot understand why they have not started Space 1999 up again. But it's to
Reboot.
do with the license, isn't it?
Now it is. I mean, and even there's so many rules of thought on that, and the unfortunate, and one of the things that can potentially limit it is it is called Space 1999, and we're in
Yeah,
2025 now, and
yeah,
there have been different folks that have taken different approaches and have different things, and it's Johnny Byrne back in 1999. I was at the Space 1999 Breakaway Convention, and this was 1999 had literally been off the air for what 23 years, and he had
hmm,
talked about wanting to try to bring it back, and he was thinking of trying to come up with something, and it was really exciting discussion just being around this table with
mm,
him and him talking about his ideas and everything. And it's a shame
hmm,
that it didn't happen then, because I think if he had been involved on that level,
yeah,
and especially with Christopher Penfold at that
yeah,
time, and it I think that would have been like a prime time for that to have happened. My gut
absolutely.
is it will never happen. And and I'm not
No,
taking away from anybody that tries to make it happen. I mean, anything that's Space 1999 related, you know what? It's wonderful. But in
yeah,
regards to what we've had with the series back in the 70s, I mean, that, whatever is made now today, it's going to be a nod to that time from that show.
yeah.
But it is a shame though that
Well,
something.
the thing is that they're more. I mean, now the effects would be even better than what they were then. The special effects.
Well,
If it was now, I mean, you get the special effects, which would be fantastic, wouldn't they?
yeah,
I mean, they're good. They were good then, but they would be even better with the technology that we
yeah,
Well,
have
because
now.
that's sorry. One of the things about the show, you're absolutely right, Suzanne. That sort of set it apart for from anything else at the time were the visual effects.
Yeah.
And speaking of the idea of a reboot, versus 20 years ago, when like Roy said, this was really being bounced around by a few parties, versus
Mm.
today. it's interesting because in my mind, there's the last few years in particular, there's actually been a resurgence in what they call practical effects, right? Whereas everything back in 50 years ago was of course practical. They got away from all that in the 90s and the 2000s with everything digital and computer based graphics and CGI, and now there's been sort of a shift of the pendulum again, and I think it would be a very interesting time to approach a reboot today visually, because I think the perfect solution is sort of a combination of the two different types of visual effects, and using one to sort of enhance the other, as opposed to going all digital, which has its drawbacks as well, right? Because it's somewhat limiting. But yeah,
it's all about the balance.
It is, Roy. Yeah, you just took the words right out of my mouth.
It really is. I mean, I don't know. To me, what Brian Johnson did with his special effects, I mean, fast forward 50 years later, most of those effects, not all, but I would say at least, I can confidently say 90% of those effects.
I was just going to say 90% still hold up so well today that nobody can bat an eye and look at something from 50 years ago and say, oh yeah, that was done 50 years ago. That's how proficient they were. And then on top of that is the interior design, right, that we talked about with Keith Wilson, and everything he did with wonderful moon-based sets. And you, Suzanne, you walked those halls. I mean, it must have been surreal.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was the sets were really good. They were good.
And what can happen too is, depending, and this is what always amazes me, because I've been to a few different sets. When you see the sets in person, it's like, wow, it doesn't look as real as it does on television. It's like you can tell it's a set, but then when you're watching it on television, it's like, wow, it is so cool. And I think, that's how it was like in regards to Space 1999. And I can imagine, Suzanne, when you saw those sets, I mean, they were impressive, futuristic, but it's just that then, but still, it looks like a set. And then when you see it on television, it's like, there's something, a magic about it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Could you get lost in it? I mean, if you watch a movie and they're really good sets and whatever, you get lost in the actual movie, don't you? And it was the same with space, I'm sure. Sorry, this pillow.
Oh, it's okay.
It's not a pillow.
Because the lighting, the photography, that all adds to it. I mean, it adds to the magic, and it just makes it that much. It adds that much more realism to it.
Absolutely. I mean, the lighting guy was good. He was good. The lighting guy on that.
Lighting cameraman. Yeah. Frank Watts, I think.
Yeah, it was lovely, Frank.
Yeah.
And who's the other? Brandon Stafford, was that?
Yes.
Yeah.
The second year.
Yeah. I was just going to give you guys a good example of that, and to circle back to London with Daryl's Eagle set.
Yeah.
And Daryl was very concerned about it not being done and completed. He took so much pride in that build, and he was so worried. But in actuality, what happened when people got there and people actually sat in that seat, the magic happens right here within the camera lens. Right. And we all figured that out right away. That first night, I took a couple shots of it, and then I posted it on Facebook, and then was able to crop it in such a way that you couldn't tell the difference between Daryl's set and a screenshot from the series.
Very clever, isn't it, Daryl? Very clever.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, you saw his work. He's him and his whole family, son Scotty, and everybody, his whole crew.
Yeah, that was magic. Talk about magical. That was just amazing. It really was. I remember just being in the middle of all that, and I have to share a lot of the photos. There's been so much family stuff going on that a lot of the photos I took so many pictures, and a lot of the things I wanted to share, I just haven't had the opportunity to. So I'll have a little extra free time on my hands once I'm in recovery. So that'll be one of the things I will make sure to do, try to share with different folks.
Yeah.
But
guys, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to leave you guys now. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
but I've got a sick aunt in my house, and I've got to go and sort her out.
Yeah.
But Roy, good luck. Good luck with your. I'll be thinking of you, darling.
Thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate it,
And good luck to
you.
your mom.
Thank you. I'll let her know. Yeah, that's tomorrow. So we're literally within 24 hours of each other, which is crazy. But I will let her know. Thank you so much for that.
No, not at all. And
thanks for
Warren,
being on with
to
us.
see you. Yeah, I'm so sorry that I've got to go, but I've got a 96-year-old aunt here that I've got to.
Don't you worry. It was just such a pleasure. We thank you. We're so grateful. And listen, before you go, as well, all the best and love to Justin as well. Okay.
Yeah.
I will. I'll tell him. You guys take care.
You too. Talk soon.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye-bye. See ya.
Bye.
Aw, I love Suzanne.
Wasn't that just amazing, hey?
Yeah. Oh boy. So yeah, time just goes. I mean, we're at 52 minutes right now. Time just goes really, really quickly.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And glad we're able to help you pass some of that time, those boring hours sitting up at the hospital there. So
yeah, no, this is great. And I love sharing, like I said, love sharing information that has been shared and passing it on. I think it's cool finding out about these tidbits. And speaking of some tidbits, alternate titles for this episode, Warren. Did you have an awareness about that?
You know what? That's not overly until Bob and David's book came out as to the diversity of some of the optional or alternate titles. Some of them are pretty humorous as well.
The Second Sex.
Yes.
The Other Enemy.
Yeah.
And then they went with The Last Enemy. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's always kind of cool to find out. The title itself is a reference in the Bible, from Corinthians 14, chapter 14, verse 26. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. That's pretty profound. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting religious on anybody here. I'm just, although I'm getting religious because I'm going in for surgery, but
no, that's fine. Totally fine. I have to admit, I'm not up in my Corinthians. So thank you for that. But no, listen, I wanted to address as well with this episode, and that title, The Second Sex, really says it all. For being a production in the mid 1970s, it's really interesting that they were bold and daring enough to sort of take that reverse sexism approach here.
Yep.
And portray the female as the dominant, the aggressor, and say what you will about it just being a population of only females, but even when they're, I mentioned the negotiation process. I mean, even with Thea and Talos, Thea is very much the dominant, and Talos is portrayed as sort of the meek, sort of feeble, quiet, and things like that.
Well, one thing I remember talking to a mutual friend, Lou Place, and we had talked about this episode a long time ago, and it's with Teos, when he's talking to the Alphans initially, he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, let me do it." He's like,
"Yeah, not meek and feeble, but just more laid back and reserved."
His eyes are almost like closed. Yes, I mean, while he's talking, but when he gets animated, he's like this. Yes. He really comes at, and then he goes back, and then he's like this. And I get why they did it. It was a form of characterization, and they, to your point, they were trying to establish, his personality, how he was pretty much laid back, and then when he's pretty much pushed to the limit, then it just sets him off, and then of course, then he just kind of regresses back to where he originally was. It was different. I mean, it was clever. It was simple. It was clever. It was different. And why not? It was a nice, interesting touch, and it was something that I never saw before. And
no, you never had seen.
And we're talking about it 50 years later, so it achieved its purpose.
It was a very bold move, creatively to portray things that way, and I mean, overall, and Roy, it's funny because I had no idea that the filming was this chopped up as you were describing with that last 3 days of filming. I knew there were some problems. I'd heard down through the years that it was very much based on Barbara Bain's input, right? She basically directed it as opposed to Bob Kellett. She was very hands on with things, and it's interesting because I'd never really heard before that Jerry was the one that stepped in and said he wasn't happy with it. That was new to me.
But if you go back and watch the episode, which I did this, I actually was doing it this morning because I was watching it from beginning to end. Like I said earlier, I had noticed that back in the day, and I'm talking like 40, 45 years later, 40, 45 years ago, maybe even closer to 50, the appearance of Dione looking different. And that was the one thing that always stood out to me, that she looked different throughout the course of the episode. And like I said, she has like a softer look to her at times, and then she has a more rougher look to her. And then the other thing that always kind of seemed weird to me too, again, was where she's basically demanding asylum, and Koenig is saying, you know what, you have no place to be doing that, and it's like, you know what, take her away, and the guards are going to take her out, and then she's like, listen to me, and then Koenig says, you give me no choice, and then the next thing you know, she's sitting and she's introducing herself. That always just kind of seemed off to me, because it's like, why wouldn't she have introduced herself before then? You know what I mean? But the whole point of all that is that's how it was originally, set up to go. She was going from the airlock to where they're in a command conference, and she's saying who she is. But they put those additional scenes in because they were trying to do more of a backstory to alter the plot. And the other thing is they were short on time. They were actually short by 10 minutes. So they needed these little fillers. The scene with Sandra in the of her taking Dione to her quarters. That was another thing that was added. I didn't mention before. That was another added scene. So what would be interesting, and I wish I had the software, which I know you've got. I would love to have the ability to take this episode and just put it together piece by piece with where it's the old components, or the original components, and take out those additional scenes and just have that. Again, it wouldn't be a finished episode because they didn't finish it in the sense that, what was going to transpire at the end, where, Koenig is basically giving his, the coordinates to the Deltans, to Theos, and then it would destroy it. The Beethan gunship.
Yeah, but it would be interesting, and we do have the ability. I mean, we played around with that quite a bit, and even in recreating the alternate version of Matter of Life and Death with the opening credit sequences and things like that. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I was actually toying with the idea the last couple of weeks of maybe doing an alternate version of an upcoming episode that we haven't reviewed yet. That's very much a fan favorite, and maybe thinking about. Of course, this episode, I think you and I discussed going live with it again and doing a live broadcast, but maybe watching it within that broadcast, this alternate version. We'll see.
Yeah. There's, it's fun. It's fun to kind of discuss these possibilities.
It's to speculate on these what ifs has been really fascinating, and of course, along with all that, everything that went into that alternate breakaway version was really, really interesting to cut together for the first time with all those lost audio clips. Yeah,
absolutely. But what's cool about this one is that it originally was conceived to go one way, and then again they knew they were going to have to come back. It was literally put off onto the shelf, and it's like when things are all complete, they would have to call back and have Carolyn Mortimer come on and refilm her scenes. They would actually have to have Kevin Stoney, who played Talos, come back just to do that, scene. Because this was almost like a bottle episode, if you think about it too, because really it's taking place. It was taking place in main mission. It was taking place in the Commander Koenig's office, and also they have the airlock sequence, and then they have the Eagle. I mean, it's very contained. And then you had a simple background for Dione when she's on the ship. And again, when they went to do those additional scenes in February of 1975, they had to construct the whole I'll say, bridge or command center of the ship. And again, we see the cool controls that, we have seen in other episodes where, they put their hands over and then it actually activates the controls. They did it in the door cons. They did it in this episode, and there's another episode that they did that in, and I can't think of it at the moment, where it activates the panels.
And you also see just a funny little tidbit. One of the control centers or desks in that bridge is actually the same desk that you see Maya appear on for the very first time in Metamorph when she's the lion or the tiger.
Yes,
and she's laying on the control console.
Exactly. Yeah. Good catch with that. Yeah. So it's, and it's, of course, it's recycling of sets and equipment. It's for budgetary concerns. You repurpose things. I mean, so it's a way to keep the cost down, which there's nothing wrong with, but keep rolling with that.
One of the things, and you just struck a chord with me, that bridge set. I've always been curious because we've discussed the layout for year 1, year 2 versus and how year 2 is very much a static set, right? But year 1 was very fluid, and they basically, the only standing set was main mission, right? And everything else was sort of on the fly. That's why medical was so different. That's why you saw the nuclear generating area for a couple episodes and then never again. And one of the things I've always been curious about is, because I'm thinking more so of Mission of the Darians, the interior of some of the Darian spaceship.
Yeah.
I think there's hints of that Darian interior actually being, bear with me here, sort of placed in the middle of main mission, because you can see like the bank of computer walls behind them, and there's sort of like the glass sliding doors or whatever panels that you can't really make it out. I've always wondered if they haven't actually set up like in the middle of main mission, because they clear out all the desks. We've seen behind the scenes shot with that whole middle area just emptied out, right? Did they actually build a set like that in the middle of main mission just to save space or things like that?
They could have, and I know exactly. I just watched Mission of the Darians probably in the last week. It's interesting that you're talking about that. And I noticed they had that glass in the back. It was like behind Koenig, because he's sitting at that long desk. And there, if I remember correctly, I think there were like steps going down too. So to your point, they could have done that for that episode. They could have put the glass in the background to conceal the behind the scenes of main mission. And you can actually, I remember when I was watching it, I could see like people in the background, like other Darians, because they're moving about and everything. So yeah, that's a good catch. That's a possibility. I mean, why not?
Right? And it just makes me wonder, because your story that the last 3 days or the reshoots involved that bridge interior. I'm wondering if that set wasn't maybe built in the middle of main mission as well. Who knows?
Could have been. Yeah. And speaking of which, talking about main mission, there is really some really cool photography and use of, and I'm not a film, well, been involved in productions, but I don't know what you would call it, but it's almost like a crane. And there's some behind the scenes shots where they show the crane in main mission while they're filming this episode. And they really take advantage of it, because you have Koenig Martin Landau that's going from one end of main mission to the other, and he goes up, he goes from the viewports, he crosses over, and then he goes up the balcony, and then he's like looking out. And really, the crane, the camera follows him pretty consistently as he's going up the steps and around. So there's some really interesting photography. And as we all know, unfortunately, a part of the reason that they actually abandoning using main mission in year 2 was because of they said that Freddie Freiberger wanted to make it more of an intimate type of a setting, have everybody closer together. But there was a lot of difficulty or a lot of time that was utilized in filming main mission because of the lighting of main mission. It was very difficult to light because it was so vast, because it was such an incredible set. But there is a lot of good, I'll say, in-house photography that's taking place. And again, if you go online, there's definitely behind the scene photos that will show this And again, I don't know. I'm going to say it's a
I think I'm not an expert either. I think it's a dolly, like
dolly, maybe. Yes, dolly. Thank you.
A dolly shot, right?
Dolly shot. Yeah. But it really works out really well. I mean, it's really cool. So it's.
Oh, it does, and it wasn't just the lighting, because I've heard those stories as well, but also just the fact that, speaking of that dolly, it was so difficult to position that dolly in, right? And that's why I think they actually removed the steps along the one wall. After Ring Around the Moon.
Exactly.
I think it was for exactly specifically that reason.
Yeah, because you're limited where you can go with it because it's so big, and just to get it in there had to be, it's cumbersome.
Yeah, it's massive, massive.
And then also as some things that are recycled. Talking about things that are recycled, when we see Alphins going down the steps, going, pretty much because the base is potentially going to be under attack. The scenes of the Alphins going down the steps that was utilized in war games.
Yeah.
In war games, we actually saw them coming down, and then they showed, I think, there was a photo of them with their, you just see their feet. They actually recycle that, and you only see their feet. You don't see them as the people coming down. But it's the balcony area. I mean, it's very obvious it is.
It's unmistakable. Yeah.
Which is fine. It totally works.
Yeah. My only criticism that I really, really wish they would have done, and it was originally in pre-production artwork and concepts that Keith Wilson did, is I wish they would have put a door at the top of that balcony on the far end, right? And it just would have made a lot more sense. I mean, it's just the balcony really serves no purpose, other than an observation gallery, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's the visual aesthetics. It looks, it just makes it look that much more vast, I think, and it was very unique, especially for the 70s, for something like that. I don't know. I always felt that Moonbase Alpha was so much more functional in the first season, and it's just I don't know. It's just me with the.
You're totally right, and this is where I'm going to bring it back to that in the making of Space 1999, that year 2 blueprint of the sets were just, and as soon as you saw that as a kid, it ruins all the magic, doesn't it?
I loved it. I was going to tell.
I did too. I was fascinated, but when you go back then and watch the episodes, it really.
So for the folks out there again who don't have this book, and I'm sure the majority of the folks out there do have this book, and this is by Tim Helds, who sadly
and look at guess what's actually on the front cover, Roy? We were just talking about it.
Yeah, I know, right? There it is. Exactly, the dolly. There it is, right there. But I remember I was ecstatic when I saw the Comlock like that, because oh my God, to me, I'm a big Space 1999 in regards to whatchamacallit, I'll say the
props. Yep.
Communicator and phaser. The communicator from Star Trek is like my all-time favorite prop. The Comlock is also one of my all-time favorite props, and also the stun gun from Space 1999, and there of course is the year 2 one, but and then of course the phaser. But now what Warren and I are talking about, and again I'm sure everybody knows, is this schematic that was in this book. And I remember watching the episodes, even like in 70s. I got this book in 77. So, seeing them in repeats and just like knowing where they were supposedly going and where everything was. And it's in perfect alignment. The only time it would vary is if they had maybe something that was a specific set for a specific episode that would be different. And it was a double-edged sword, because it's like on one hand, it's like, oh man, this is so cool. I know where they're going. I know where everything is. And then on the other hand, it's like, oh shoot, there goes the magic. It's like, there goes the reality. It's like, But
and on top of that, I think we mentioned this off air last week when we were talking about this very same topic, is that in year 2, one of the drawbacks in my mind is that they only use down the main corridor the orange panels, and they never change them up, and that's one thing that year 1 did, is in changing the lighting panels, it gave you a sense that the base is a lot larger than what it was.
Right.
But it was always so constrictive in year 2 because they only had that one corridor. They never changed the orange panels, and
you just go around the bend, and you had that one it was almost like a schematic of where things were located,
Yep.
and the travel tube.
Travel tube was right behind command center.
Right.
You knew that every time. And down the hall, the one way was the technical section, the other way was medical.
Medical, yeah. And then you had weapons section that was in between. It was in the middle.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, what's interesting is on the one side is the weapons section, and on the other side, the eagle is literally on the is on the other side of that wall that you don't see, which is pretty amazing. Telling a quick story, I was with my parents we were coming back from seeing my grandparents in Florida. We were driving back, and it was in 77, and I think it was in August, and we were driving. It was a 2-day trip back from Florida to New Jersey, and we were going to stay at the midpoint in North Carolina I don't even remember the name of the hotel. But what happened was we got in, we were all set, and it was like a major heat wave, and it must have been like in the 90s, and we just got everything into the room, and the air conditioner wasn't working, and it was like no way. So what happened? I mean, we had to take everything back, and I remember my dad, and I was probably like 11. I was worried he was gonna have like a heat stroke because it was so hot, and we were in the process of getting checked back out, and there was a gift shop, and you know how you have like a one of those things that's like in the middle of the stores, and it's on a rack and it spins, and on that rack in this hotel gift shop was this, and I was like, oh my God, I had no clue about it, and I was so stoked. And I remember going to my mom, please, and what was it, $1.95 US.
Oh, I know, and the blowback from your parents would have been $1.95.
But no, anything with Space 1999. So I got it, and I was so excited. I was going through that book that night, and just I was excited. All the first season episodes were in there, and then I was bummed that the second season, I think, episode guide ended with the Tabor, and I was like, what? They don't have the others? But and this is before I had gotten the technical manual, because I think it was like the following year I got it in 78 that our friend David Hirsch did for Starlog. But I was so excited to get that, because it was almost like the equivalent of the Making of Star Trek by Stephen Whitfield that had come out in the 60s that that I had gotten. So I thought, oh my God, there's a book about the making of Space 1999. So anyway, just sharing some memories.
Yeah, it's remarkable when you think about it, because I mean, back in the day, with no internet, with no newsletters, no nothing, no message boards.
Starlog was it. I mean, at least for me, Starlog was it.
Yeah, it was like the holy grail. Finding a book, an actual novel on the making of, with all those cool photos inside. Yeah, that was like the holy grail.
Yeah, because there just was nothing. I mean, like I always say, and that's why to this day I always give Starlog a plug, because that was the go-to. And having to wait for those bi-monthly issues to come out, and then even with that, sometimes David has talked about it. He didn't have any material. It's like, Jerry Anderson Space Report. And then even if it wasn't Space Nine, I would hope it was going to be a discussion about 1999, but it was the Jerry Anderson Space Report. So it meant that anything Jerry Anderson.
Yeah, sometimes they cover the Superman series.
And that was the other thing too. We didn't. Again, we're talking about the internet, but back then we didn't have 500 channels, so we didn't have access to all this material. So a lot of these shows that I was aware of that were really relatively not that old, they weren't being broadcast. I mean, it was 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, which was PBS. That was it. But I mean, if the show, these shows that like UFO, I was fortunate to have seen that in the mid 70s. But Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons and all of these other shows, Fire XL5. I mean, I didn't have the opportunity to see this stuff because it just wasn't available. But anyway.
Yeah, the Super Marination shows were, I mean, I might have just been a little too young.
Yeah.
I think the CBC broadcast some of them, but they were definitely few and far between with the broadcast that I remember anyway. And I was fortunate enough around the same time that Space was on that they were showing UFO as well. But it makes me wonder, I mean, in both our cases here, had we been exposed to more of the Super Marination series, would we be a larger fan today, right? It's really just comes down to what you saw as a kid and how impressionable you were at the time, I think.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, I'll be the first one to say, I mean, I just never got into those, and I know there's a love for it, and Thunderbirds and everything. I probably should give it a chance, but my interest is, I'm just that way, and I'm not trying to be closed minded, and I highly respect what he did, what him and Jerry and Sylvia did with that. I think it's incredible, but it's just not something that resonates with an interest with me, but probably it's because I didn't have access to it. So I think it's amazing when I see clippings and everything and just how it was done, because it's pretty impressive. But we're talking about UFO. I remember going down, we lived in an apartment complex, I was saying in Wallington before we moved out to this area. And it was probably I'm going to say 75. It was before Space 1999, so it was probably 74, 73, 74. I was downstairs, and a friend of mine at the time, and he was probably, actually his name was Scotty, and he was probably your age, Warren. I think he was about 3 years younger than I was. And again, I'm like, what, 8 years old, so you know what I mean, or 9 years old, 8 or 9, so he would have been like 5 or 6, maybe 2 years difference. But he had on, and it was in the afternoon, it was UFO, and I was like, what's this? And it was on Channel 9 out of New York. They were broadcasting it, and that's how I got exposed to that. And then I would see it in the TV guide. And the irony is, when I would watch it, I would like it when they were on the moon base, and then I would see these episodes where they're on Earth, and I was like, ah. And the irony is hearing the stories that that was part of the reason why with Space 1999 they wanted to basically, I mean, we've heard these stories that pretty much Jerry was told, what, if you're going to do something, we don't want it being shot on Earth for that reason. Now, as an adult, I love the Earth stories. I think they're great. I love the characterizations. I love what they've done with it. I like it when they're on the moon. I like it when they're on the Earth. I love UFO. I mean, I think it's a brilliant show. The 26 episodes that they did, and there's so much to it. But again, I'm looking back in reflection of a child that I was, like over 50 years ago. And it was more like being in tune to the special effects and the futuristic being on the moon base. That really appealed to me at that time, which is probably why, my love in 1999. How about you with when did you, I mean, I know, again, we're a couple of years young, you're a couple of years younger, but like I said, my one friend was too. So do you have early recollections of watching UFO?
So I was just, as you were speaking of, it was making me wonder, and I'm pretty sure I saw space first, definitely in Canada, but I was so young, and I barely even recall. And it's funny, we were talking about it with Suzanne in Canada. You see, my first recollection of watching space was very, very early on a Saturday morning, like even before the cartoon block started. I recall that I'd missed the first few episodes, and I recall one of my two sisters, or maybe both of them, seeing these episodes and saying to me one week, "You have to wake up so early on Saturday and watch this show." It was my sisters that prompted me to get up, and I was probably half asleep, and I don't remember anything on first viewing other than just the overall look and feel of the series and the characters. Right? I mean, I was so young. But then eventually it was moved more to like a late afternoon Saturday time slot. So because we only had two stations in Canada, and they always ran space opposite Star Trek on the other channel, right? So you always had to make a choice. It was on at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. But I think that's when I remember first seeing UFO was like so it would have been after space. It was in that sort of mid to late afternoon time slot on Saturdays in Canada.
Gotcha. Yeah, 1999, they actually, I think it was in 78, and now that the show had been canceled, obviously, they were running it on Channel 11 out of New York, and they were doing it for several months. They were showing it at 11 a.m. on Saturday mornings, and I was like happy because I was able to see it. Then they shifted it, I think it was on at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon for a time, and then what happened was they eventually pulled it, and then that was it. I was like, ugh. And then what they did was they wound up showing, and we talked about this the other day when we were doing the other episode. I think we were discussing War Games. They showed the Bringers of Wonder. They took the Bringers of Wonder Part 1 and Part 2, put it together. It was like in the middle of the week, and they just did it. I think it was in 1979. I seem to recollect, because I vaguely remember it was in the late 70s. And then we had also talked about when they did Breakaway and War Games, but that was like literally in 75, 76 when they edited together. They did that on their own.
Yeah.
Which ironically enough was, Alien Attack and
Right.
then Destination Moonbase Alpha. So
yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny, and just recalling that story I just relayed a few minutes ago about the sisters waking me up. It was probably because now I'm just suddenly thinking, well, why would they have made a point of it? Because I was fascinated with everything to do with NASA and the space program and the moon landings. But on TV, you see, prior to Space premiering, I would have been watching two other things, sci-fi related, of course, and again, it just fit with who I was as a kid. I would have been watching Star Trek, and I would have been watching The Star Lost, which were both, which was of course Canadian, but both would have been pre-space. Right. And then that's why they would have known that I just love these crazy shows and woken me up that one day.
Yeah. I mean, I was a huge Star Trek was introduced to me by my aunt, and I started watching Star Trek. I think it's like it had to be around 72, if I remember correctly, because then I remember when Star Trek the Animated Series premiered, I was excited about it, and that was in September of 73. And the irony with that was it premiered on NBC on a Saturday morning children's show, and it premiered on September 8th of 73, which was the same date that it had premiered in primetime in the US, which was September 8th of 66. In Canada, I believe you got it on the 6th or the 7th. It was either the day or 2 days before.
2 days before.
It was okay. So it was the 6th in 1966. You got it before we did. But I already had, been watching Star Trek. So I pretty much had a love of that. And Batman. I was a Batman fan with Adam West and Burt Ward. That was the other thing I liked. That was something I remember my dad, because it used to be on after school, and I would watch that. But getting all nostalgic here with all this stuff, Warren.
I know. Yeah. Well, it was a great time. It was a great time. And listen, I know we're overtime already as it is for this episode, but I mean, one of the other things that we could probably spend an entire episode on is just that in doing this, Roy, it's just really, because each and every time we discuss it, and today it was a great example with Suzanne. We were talking about when it was scheduled around the world, and it just makes me wonder and ask the big question: what would have happened to Space had it been picked up by a network? Because that was always the goal, to sell it to an American network. And had that happened, it might have been an entirely different history, right?
And what kills me is that they were going to do it, and what happened was a couple things. The one show that CBS wound up going with, which only lasted, I think, and I haven't covered it on the show yet, but which only lasted, I think, 13 episodes, was Planet of the Apes. That's why they turned down Space 1999, because CBS was going to go with them. I'm 99% sure they were going to go with them. And then what happened was they decided to go with Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes was making, a comeback, because the 68 film with Charlton Heston was incredible. And then they made the sequels, and they were doing there was a Saturday morning cartoon, I think, which was Planet of the Apes. I enjoyed. I used to watch that religiously. But they did the series, and unfortunately, it just Space 1999 with its budget and everything and its effects. And you're right. What would have happened? Would it potentially could have made a big difference?
Well, and you see that what is really interesting to think of is would they have commissioned all the changes?
Right.
Or would it have been canceled? Right.
It could have been canceled, and there could have been no second season. That's right. The other thing, and that's the other thing, and we'll get into this when we talk about year two.
Yeah.
A lot of, one of the, and I understand the feeling of how I love year one. I do. I enjoy a lot of the year two episodes. I really do too. When it comes to that, I like I was saying on when we were the other day again, referencing the episodes from year two. There's a lot of the earlier episodes I enjoyed, and then some in the middle. But towards the end, it really started to pick up its own thing, and it's a shame it got stopped, canceled. Um, but there's definitely differences, and if there had if those changes had not taken place, there would have been no year two. So, you can ask the question, are you okay with? I know people don't like those changes, and there's a lot of those changes I do not like myself. But is it better to have the changes and have the show, or is it better just to say no show? You know what I mean? And I think that's an individual question, and some people will even say year two doesn't exist for them. They won't watch it. And, I respect everybody's opinion. I think everybody's entitled to their opinion. I personally would rather have the year two episodes and be like, why did they do this? Why did they do that? But I enjoy those, I'll say 12 or 14 stories. You know what I mean? There's some they make me cringe, but it is what it is. That'll make a fun discussion. And again,
Yeah.
it's not to belittle anybody. It's not to disrespect anybody, because I know you don't. I don't like to speak on anybody's behalf, but I'll say I know you don't want to do that. I don't want to do that, but it's fun to see where the different opinions are. And there's a lot of fans out there that never saw year one of Space 1999. They saw year two first, and that's all they knew. And you know what? They loved it for that. And then they were exposed to year one and like, what? But which is fine. Again, it's whatever. If it's entertaining you, it's achieving its purpose. If you walk away and you like the show for whatever reasons, that's what entertainment is. I mean, that's what it's all about. And that's at the end of the day, that's all that matters. So we're just sharing different opinions, different viewpoints, trying to give different perspectives, different back information, different information that's been shared amongst the fans from different resources, and just put it out there. That's the intent.
We're going to have a very, very fun bridge episode between year one and year two. I
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, Steve Warnack and I we were looking forward to having a good time with that. And again, it was meant at the convention, but it didn't happen. So hopefully in September we'll be able to do that. And again, we'll kind of touch upon that when we do, down the road. Hopefully, so that'll be fun.
For sure. Shoot, I forgot to ask Suzanne if she has any plans for Breakaway Day this year.
Yeah, well, we got 6 months, so you got some time.
Hint. Yeah, we'll see.
Right.
Well, no, listen. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
We're pushing an hour and a half, and you have just been a trooper, sitting there in the hospital room, and you didn't even really have any interruptions per se. And
no, everything timed out well. I'm gonna probably just take a short break. I'm gonna take a. I can't get any fresh air, as Anton Zorov said. So I'm gonna have to settle for a walk down the corridor.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, by the time this episode airs, you're going to be on the path to a full and speedy recovery, I'm sure, my friend.
I hope so. I'm a bit nervous, but you know what? Everybody says it's a good thing. So I'm gonna hit it. I mean, I need to have this done. So you know what? It's God willing, and I look forward to our discussion of the troubled spirit. I do not want to be a troubled spirit, so because that will be episode 19, which will be up to bat for. So if you're good for holding off for a few weeks, and I'm good, I'm definitely going to be good for holding off for a few weeks, because I'm not going to be probably up to and definitely not going to be up to anything this Sunday. So maybe we can reconvene in a couple weeks. Obviously, this episode will be coming out on the 23rd. So maybe early March we can, discuss the troubled spirit.
For sure. There's no rush on things. You and I had gone back and forth on taking a few weeks off.
Yeah.
I think it's nobody can question why. I mean, your recovery is paramount. It's first and foremost here. You know what? There's a lot of other things, and just really quick on the YouTube channel, and boy, thank you all for liking and subscribing. It's really grown wonderfully. And there's a lot of other content that I can post in between. I know with each of these podcasts, I've been sort of syncing it with a version of the episode itself, right? So we have a ton of content on there already. But there's even more things I can post in the couple next few weeks that I've been thinking of, like the virtual events that we did, Roy. Right? I think I posted the first year, but you know, I'll be able to. There'll be lots of fun and interesting stuff in the next few weeks to keep people entertained. So
yeah, so that's a good thing. And share photos and different things like that. So yeah, it'll all come together, which is really good. So
yep,
but
100%.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you viewing this, and hope everybody's doing well. And hopefully Sunday will be a good day, and hopefully I'll be able to watch this on Sunday.
Oh yeah, no problem.
So no, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's all good. I'm just a little jumpy, but where's Dr. Russell and Dr. Bob Matthias when I need them, and Dr. McCoy. Actually, I'm very happy with the surgeon. So he's a good guy, and my mom's having the surgery tomorrow too. So it's crazy. But anyway, enough of that. Yeah. So thank you, everyone, and looking forward to seeing you next time.
We will see you all very soon.
And this is appropriate. Live long and prosper.
Yeah. For sure.
Thanks, everyone. Until tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Yep.
Take care.
Bye-bye.